Association of Women in Construction, and tonight we have some ladies here. Vernetta Woodbury, if y'all would come up, we'd appreciate it. Just stand right there. Brenda Blanton, Melinda Garrett, Mitzi Lowe, Morgan Puckett, Wilma Pinnick, Robbie Easterling, Amber Kinney, Kayana Woodbury, and Olga Mota. And we are happy to recognize these ladies in their industry. And I would ask the city attorney if he would read the proclamation.
Whereas the Greater Birmingham chapter has distinguished itself for 56 years as the voice of women in construction in the Metropolitan Birmingham area, and whereas the work done by the Greater Birmingham chapter of the National Association of Women in Construction has benefited the Metropolitan Birmingham area through community development and educational programs, and whereas the Greater Birmingham chapter has unceasingly promoted the employment and advance of women in the construction industry, and whereas the construction community represented by the Greater Birmingham chapter has been a driving force in fostering community development through renovation and beautification projects, promotion of skilled trades careers, and a positive vision of the future. And whereas the Greater Birmingham chapter has sought to achieve a successful result for the Birmingham metropolitan area and surrounding areas in a cooperative spirit with other organizations, now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Mayor Frank V. Mercado, and City Council President John B. Lyda of Hoover do hereby recognize the Greater Birmingham chapter and its many dedicated volunteers for their steadfast work on behalf of and in support of women in construction, and do proudly proclaim the week of March 5 through 11, 2023 as Women in Construction Week, and encourage our citizens to congratulate the organization on its many accomplishments.
I would like to say on behalf of the NAWIC Greater Birmingham chapter, I am so proud and honored that for about 10 years now, we do our proclamation every single year here in the city of Hoover. Y'all have always supported us tremendously. And I'm proud to say this is our 25th anniversary for celebrating women in construction across the United States. And I'm actually the co-chair, or the chair for Women in Construction Week for the nation. So we're able to not just spread it in Hoover, Birmingham area, we're also able to spread it across the whole United States. So thank you so much for your continued support. We appreciate it and look forward to doing this every single year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to recognize a couple of very special guests we have in the chamber tonight. I know Ms. Henson and the folks at the Hoover Senior Center are very privileged to have two summer interns. And if I could ask these two ladies to stand, Miss Emily McKay and Miss Abby Clark. They are students at the University of Montevallo, and I'm told they are superstars in the field of human development and family studies. We'd like to welcome you to the Hoover City Council, and thank you for serving our seniors. Also like to recognize former Councilman Joe Reeves is with us, and our Park and Rec Board member Jeremy Weiss is here tonight. A good crowd in the chamber tonight. Thank you all for being here. We will move to our consent agenda. The consent agenda is presented as items that we will take as one block vote. There will be no discussion on any of these items. However, if someone is here to speak on behalf of one of these items that you see listed in front of you, we will be happy to move that to our regular agenda so that it can be taken separately. I do know we would like to take item 4 and item 8 and move it to the regular agenda. Any member of the body like to remove another item? Is there a member of the public here to speak on behalf of items 1 through 11 with the exception of 4 or 8, which we've already moved? Seeing none, Mr. Corley, would you please read the items?
Item number 1 is the approval of minutes from the December 19th, 2022 work session and the December 19th, 2022 meeting. Item number 2, Resolution 689123 reappoints Robert Holman and Heather Harville to the Commercial Development Board of the City of Hoover for a term to expire on March 15th, 2027. Resolution 689223 approves an alcohol license for Brock's Gap Brewing Company, LLC, doing business as Brock's Gap Brewing Company, located at 500 Mineral Trace, Suite 100, Hoover, Alabama, for the sale of 020 restaurant retail liquor. Resolution 689423 authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designee to execute a master service agreement with the Grubbs and Walker Consulting, LLC, doing business as Scout Program Management, and any and all documents necessary for the execution of such agreement for professional consulting services for the pre-construction phase, design and building for the construction phase, and managing the contract for various capital projects. Resolution 689523 authorizes the acceptance of a bid for Mayor's Office renovations, bid number 23-003 from Jared Building Company, Inc., for an amount not to exceed $66,900, and authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designee to execute an agreement for such and any and all documents necessary to approve such agreement. Resolution 689623 authorizes the acceptance of a bid for the Oriole Drive Sidewalk Improvement Project, bid number 23-004 from Avery Landscaping and Associates, LLC, for an amount not to exceed $181,104, and authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designee to execute any and all documents necessary for such agreement. Resolution 689723 amends the budget. I'm skipping that one. Resolution 690223 authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designee to execute an agreement with Class Tran. Resolution 690323 authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designee to execute a community service agreement with Meals on Wheels for the donation of $10,000 to Meals on Wheels. Resolution 690423 authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designee to execute a plat map for Baines Bridge Plat Number 1 for the purpose of creating 2 lots from 3 acreage parcels, with the said plat map to be presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval of the consent agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We'll now take up item number 4, resolution number 6893-23. Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Mercado or his designee to execute an agreement with Aho Architects, LLC, including any and all documents necessary for such agreement for the design of the new Hoover Fire Station Number 1, located at 1596 Montgomery Highway, and space planning design of the existing building located at 3021 Lorna Road.
You want to say? Okay, so, Mr. President, if I can, and I'd be remiss since we have a large crowd, you stated this quite a bit. We moved through these items relatively quickly because we have a work session on the Thursday prior. So much discussion was had on this. A couple amendments on this particular item. As it relates to the space allocation study, just an amendment to state that no fee will be charged on that until a proposal is developed for the space allocation piece of that. And the second category, as it relates to the fire station, once the architect gets to the 30% schematic design, that construction cost estimate will be submitted back to this council so we can make a determination, so we'll know how much the actual facility itself will cost. All we can do that is have some form of a schematic design to make that determination once talking to our staff. Those are my only 2 comments on that. And Jahad did submit to the council another document going down the list of the fire station, the components, the categories, and also the different levels of design that will be required for that as well, too, and that's in your document.
Very good. Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I will motion what I just stated.
Okay.
Second.
Madam Clerk, do you have that? Very good. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the council? Any questions or comments from members of the audience here? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We'll now take up item number 8, resolution 6897-23. Mr. Corley.
This resolution amends the budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023, as shown on the exhibit to the resolution.
Mr. President, motion to continue to the call of the chair, resolution number 6897-23.
Second.
We have a motion and second to continue item number 8 to the call of the chair. Any questions from the members? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We'll now move to our regular agenda, items 12 through 18. Each of these items will be read separately. We will have discussion from the body, perhaps a presentation from city staff, and then at that time, we will have public comment from anyone who would like to speak on any one of those items. So if you're here to talk about one of those particular items, just know that at some time I will make you aware that we were now ready for public comment, and we would invite you to the podium to speak on that particular item. I would ask that when you come to the podium, that you give us your name and address so that we may know who you are and have that in our records, in our minutes. Each member of the public will be recognized for 3 minutes. You'll see a clock on the screen in front of you and on the screen behind me just to help you keep time. And we just ask you keep that to be respectful of everyone here, as I'm sure we have a lot of folks who want to participate, and we're very excited about that and happy to hear from you. We'll begin with item number 12. That's resolution number 6898-23. Mr. Corley.
This resolution approves and adopts the 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2023 through 2027 and directs Mayor Mercado to plan for and implement the capital improvement projects listed in Exhibit 1 to the resolution.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of resolution number 6898-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If those who were here for the work session on Thursday night, we took these items because they're so and closely related. We took them as a discussion point together. So tonight, you will have an opportunity to speak about each of those if you so choose. But to kick us off, I've asked Mr. Rice and Ms. Bolt to come and give us a brief overview of each of these.
Thanks, Mr. President. We are, of course, discussing the capital improvement plan, but as you mentioned, these are all interrelated. And today, you probably got an opportunity to see a modified set of resolutions for items 13, 14, and 15, and I wanted to talk about that language that's in there. Our very capable underwriter team from Fraser Lanier, excuse me, is also here with us tonight. So any questions for Ms. Bolt or the reps from Fraser Lanier, we'd be happy to handle those as well. So this item is for you to consider adoption of our 5-year proposed capital improvement plan, which of course allocates some money that is proposed to come from the bond that we'll discuss in the next 3 items, and also money from traditional city capital funds. 2 of the items specifically to be proposed to be bond funded are partly funded by the bond and partly funded by city traditional revenues. So in the 3 resolutions that you'll take up next, you'll see some language. The one about the interstate does not contain this language, I don't believe, but the other 2 do, where it talks about an amount of money approximate to be funded from bond proceeds. This is what you'll see reflected on this capital improvement plan. For example, Hoover Met Complex, you'll see a total of $15 million that's proposed to be spent from bond proceeds. And then it talks about and any other additional city funds. So that sounds open-ended, but it's not, because if you keep reading that resolution, it refers back to this 5-year capital plan. So it says any other funds, and I'm not quoting it, but basically any other funds as determined in the approved capital plan. We needed to maintain the flexibility that we discussed on Thursday night for this body to come back and reallocate bond funds as needed. If a project comes in under, then you would have that money available to you, and as a group decide, do you want to repay it at the call date? Do you want to reallocate it to other city needs? So that was a priority. The second priority was to acknowledge the fact that as costs shift and things change, that specifically the Hoover Met project and the Center for the Arts project could have, variability in how much city money needed to go into those projects. So this is the language that we think satisfies both of those imperatives. And so even though the next 3 resolutions say this much bond money and other city funds to be determined, it's determined in the language of the resolutions by this 5-year plan. And we talked at length on Thursday night that this plan will change. We'll be back and forth to the council over time with new iterations of the 5-year capital plan. So I want to stop there and maybe take any questions on that particular point, because that's really central to the action that is being requested of you to take on the next 3 resolutions.
Any questions for Mr. Rice regarding the 5-year plan that he's described?
I have one, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
A question I was asked by a citizen, kind of indirectly, was, you're looking out 5 years, of course, this will be into the next quadrennium where this is going. Do you have any reservation about the ability to repay the bond and to cover any of these expenses within this capital plan based on what you've looked at projection-wise over that time?
We don't. We believe that this 5-year plan is very achievable, given the proposal to sell the bonds and given the current trend that we're on for existing revenues, as was established in the rolling reserve ordinance. So we've got a really good process or method to look at to make that determination. So it's no longer that year-to-year projection that you're very familiar with. It's now a 20-year trend line that we're working off of. And Ms. Bolt can amplify this if needed, but her proposal is to leave out the statistical outlier years, the last 2 years where we've had these strange windfalls due to stimulus money and other things. So I don't believe she plans to include those 2 outliers and those windfalls in that 20-year trend line. So short answer, no, we don't have those reservations.
One more question, just to clarify, I know we've talked about this a lot, the debt service with this bond will remain at the level of debt service we've been used to paying over the last few years for the duration.
That's right, and that's correct. And it's $13 million a year that we currently spend on debt service, and that will not increase. Obviously, it will continue 4 more years, 4 additional years. But, I had somebody ask me a question, well, isn't that kind of like going to a car lot and seeing how long they'll drag your payment out? And that answer is no, because you're only buying 1 car under that example. This is extending an existing debt service payment, but getting an exit off of 459, making millions of dollars of upgrades to the Met, and establishing a Center for the Arts. So yes, the payment will continue longer than it would today, but we'll buy a lot more stuff than we would today. Does that answer it?
It does, thank you.
Yes, sir. Did you have something you wanted to, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if you remember, our debt service currently stands around $13 million. We set aside the funds for the 2020. So that money is already sitting there. So we're trying to wrap this new debt to be no more than around $13 million. So we would still be budgeting the same amount that we've been budgeting in the past.
And the call date on the 2020 warrants is 2026, correct?
No, the call date was September, but we paid that off in 2026.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify that.
Any other questions about the capital plan? If not, I'll ask Mr. Rice to move into the next 3 items.
Yes, sir. So I think the next one you have, number 13, relates to the interchange. You know, we've talked about it at length in several meetings. This is our contractual obligation with AlDOT at this point to generate these funds within 30 days of the governor signing the agreement, which she signed, I think Friday will be 2 weeks ago. So we're, by the end of this week, we're roughly halfway through our 30-day period. We know from our underwriters' information that that's an achievable timeline. They'll watch the market, but they'll watch it with that deadline date in mind, and we'll generate the needed funds. And we don't have any additional city capital right now programmed into this project. Based on everything we know tonight, the $61 million will be our sum total commitment to the interchange project.
If you'd go ahead and present the next 2, too.
Sure,
and we'll
absolutely.
take questions and answers as we get to each of those.
Yes, sir. So the Center for the Arts project, I'll refer you back to the 5-year plan. It has not changed since we looked at it on Thursday. Right now, we've programmed a total of $20 million on the city's part, with $17 million proposed to come from bond proceeds, an additional $3 million. I think on Thursday, we were able to send a distribution to you of what our money would go toward in that arrangement between ourselves and the developer. And it is for the park and for outfitting the shell building that we will lease as a Center for the Arts with sound and lighting and rigging and stage equipment and things of that nature. So pause for any questions on that particular project.
If we could take questions after we get a motion in a
Got it.
second, Mr. Rice.
Sorry.
Let's just, no problem. Let's
Yeah.
go into
So we'll
number
go on,
14.
yes, sir. We'll go on to the next item, which is the additional improvements for the Hoover Met Complex. Again, we sent a distribution out last week, of the things that we believe will be the most likely. There's a long list of things that could be done. I do want to stipulate, we're talking about the Hoover Met Stadium. We're not talking about having to go out and reinvest a lot of money in the rest of the complex because it's only about 5 years old. So we're talking about the 35-year-old Hoover Met Stadium. To that end, I did ask a gentleman to come and speak to us a little bit about that. I think you've all met him. His name is Allan Pate. He was with the city for about 30 years. Interestingly, his first engagement with the city of Hoover was under a contract, and it was to be the project manager to build the Hoover Met. So that was his entry into his official relationship with the city. He also, because of the virtue of his responsibilities over the years, led on the negotiations with the Southeastern Conference for many, many years. So he has unique historic and institutional knowledge, and I thought it would be important for him to come kind of put all this in context. This is a lot of money on a major facility, but I think he can give us some history and background about what has taken place there from day one. So I'd ask if you would recognize Mr. Pate.
Mr. Allan Pate, come forward. And would you join me in welcoming Mr. Pate back to the chamber?
Well, I believe this is the first time in 6 or 7 years that I have been in here. And I must say you've done an excellent job renovating it. The technology is great. I looked up there at the clock a while ago and I thought it was on Wheel of Fortune. So over the years, as you know, when that stadium was built, it was built as a major league stadium for a minor league team. But still, there was a lot of things that needed to be included when the SEC started playing there that wasn't. So over the years, from different year to year, we continued to improve the stadium, continued to maintain it, continued to keep it in excellent shape. I can give you an example. When it was built for the Barons, there was 2 press boxes, which is all you needed. You had the Barons playing, and then whoever the team they were playing. So you need a broadcast booth for the 2 teams, and that was it. Well, along comes the Southeastern Conference, and now you need a minimum 4 broadcast booths. You need 2 for the 2 teams that are playing. You need 2 for the 2 teams that are about to start, so they can go on the air and be getting out. So those kind of improvements to accommodate the SEC, we have done over the years. The speaker system was another one. That big box you see sitting on top of the building in center field, that was the original speaker system. As a matter of fact, those speakers are still in there. But then we redid the speaker system, and now you've got the speakers right over your head blaring down on you. You can hear them fine. But it's things like that that we've done over the years to keep the Met up, keep it in good shape. Press boxes where there was not enough seating for the media that follows the SEC. So we double-decked both press boxes, the football and the baseball. And now you have seats above and below, and you can handle in excess of 100 media that comes to cover those games. When the SEC first came to Hoover, you might get a Sunday afternoon championship game on TV, but there was no SEC network. You didn't get them all on TV like you do today. So today, the recognition that you get from the city of Hoover because of the broadcast is worth an untold amount of money because you're on there for a solid week. The field, we redid the field one time, and I don't know what kind of shape the field is in now, Alan, but you certainly want to keep that field in good shape. You've got athletes out there that are just one step away from being pro athletes, and you certainly don't want ball taking bad bounces and hurting somebody. So just things like that we've done over the years, and to keep it up, keep it in good shape. And I'm glad to see y'all are considering that tonight, continuing to make improvements and hopefully do some things that the SEC is asking you to do. Any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer. Sorry about my voice.
Thank you, Mr. Pate. If you wouldn't mind sticking around for the vote of that item, there may be questions or comments that we may could get you to weigh in on.
I'll be here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Rice and Mr. Pate. We will go back now to item number 12. Having a motion and a second, I would ask, is there any questions or comments from the members on item 12, Resolution 6898-23? Any questions or comments from members of the public on item number 12?
KT Thomas, 1426 Scout Trace. I'm concerned about this. I could go as far as saying I'm opposed to this. We have reserve funds, which would cover the cost of the interchange, and we wouldn't have to have a bond. And it sounded like at the previous meeting on Thursday that partly the bond rating was to be able to, putting the money in the reserve was to be able to get the bond rating to borrow the money. Well, if we have the cash, why are we borrowing the money? I'm not opposed to any of the three things necessarily, but I'm extremely concerned about one thing that was omitted. And that is there's $3 million over this 5 years and $91 million and only $3 million for stormwater. And that's something you've already approved out of the general fund. Now, we know that there's stormwater problems all over this city. People have died, people's homes have been destroyed, people's cars have been destroyed, and there's not a long-term plan. Now, if anything should be in a 5-year plan, it should be stormwater management. What happens if you don't get your new NPDES permit, or if we have another disaster and these things aren't fixed? The city will be culpable for that because you're not including that in a long-term plan. Is the health, the safety, and the well-being of people who live here not as important as a Center for the Arts? So I want you to think about that. President Lyda said a few meetings ago that the council would consider any proposal that was brought to them. So I have a proposal, and it is relative to the 8 drainage studies that have been completed and that the city paid $82,000 for, and that's only 7 of them. 5 of them were completed in 2021. One item out of all of those drainage studies, and it's only half of what's in that particular study, has been addressed in terms of the budget. $158,000 was allocated in the mayor's 2023 budget to fix the problem on Maiden Lane, half of the problem. So I'm asking you to look at this proposal that I'm bringing you that would address all of those drainage studies tonight. Since you welcomed those, I'm bringing them to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Any other public comments tonight on this item? Mr. Dangle?
Good evening. My name is Paul Dangle. I live at 357 Oak Trace, and I'm the current Director of Sales and Marketing for the Hyatt Regency Birmingham, the Winfrey Hotel. I come this evening to ask you to strongly consider approving all 3 of these motions, but the one that is near and dear to my heart certainly is the improvements for the SEC and for the Hoover Met complex, particularly the stadium. As you well know, Birmingham has had the opportunity and time to host different SEC events. Hoover has the SEC baseball tournament. There are several cities around the United States that have an interest in taking that away from Hoover. As Mr. Pate just touched on, the awareness that our city gets by having that backdrop and by having those 40-plus hours, it's probably more than that, on ESPN and on ESPN2 over the course of the week is immeasurable. Not to mention the impact on our economy, the number of guest rooms and restaurants that are filled by having that tournament here. My team at the hotel knows that that week, every single week, is busy from that Sunday when those teams arrive until the following Sunday when the championship game is played and they depart in May in a traditionally slower time of the year. That business is all but irreplaceable to us. You know, when you start looking at the SEC tournament that is in Nashville this weekend with basketball, That's not coming to, let's even say Birmingham, much less to Hoover. Golf, soccer, all of those events that are of the size. Baseball is where our feet are in the sand. They have 2 more teams joining the SEC next year, which will probably limit our opportunity to continue to host SEC Media Days because the event is just continues to grow bigger and bigger. So I believe having the SEC in our backyard in Birmingham, having them with us here in Hoover is irreplaceable. In addition to that, as a resident of Trace Crossing and as somebody who supports what goes on at the Hoover Met, it's time to build this interchange. I know you, or mostly everyone in the room is in agreement with that from the standpoint that when those events do take place at the Met Complex, whether it is the SEC or a tournament like we had this past weekend, getting out from that area right now is challenging. And having a second departure area from that area I know is under discussion, but then they've got to be funneled somewhere and they've got to be able to get out of that area onto 459. And lastly, in my last 20 seconds, I'm on the pitch clock like the SEC. The Art Center, it's just needed. It's time, and it gives something to have in our backyard there at the Galleria and in the central area of Hoover that sets us apart. So I appreciate it. I think all 3 are worthy, but I especially support the Hoover Met improvements. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dangle.
Good evening. My name is Paul Sanford. I represent the Barber Companies. Our address is 27 Inverness Center Parkway. I'm a chief financial officer for our company. We're a real estate investment company with substantial real estate investments in the city of Hoover. And we're constantly seeking new real estate investments in the city of Hoover and investing more and more funds in our city. Also have a unique position of having served over 5 years on the Hoover Park and Rec Board until recently, and so I welcome the opportunity to speak about both these subjects today. I was on the park board when we went through the development and funding for the Finley Center, and there was a lot of skeptics in the room, and there was a lot of skeptics in the city. And what you see has happened is, you know, I hate to use a movie reference, but it was if you build it, they will come idea. And that has certainly happened in our city. And our city has benefited hugely in terms of tourism dollars, sales tax revenues, hotel revenues that are supporting so many other things now within our city. And there were some visionaries that knew that would happen, that promoted the idea, and they championed the idea from the beginning, and that is paid through to fruition. But it's like Mr. Rice was saying, you do have to continually improve. And as I said on the park board, on the Park and Recreation Board, there was always a need to continually improve all of our facilities. But specifically the Met, the city is in an arms race. There's no doubt about it. And when the Met was built, it was the best facility of its kind in America. But it became the mark that everybody else then began trying to beat, and did. I mean, just because more cities throw more and more money at it. So over time, the Met has had to have reinvestments, which have been done. And, the recent negotiations, the last round of negotiations with the SEC to keep the facility here in the city, the SEC had a hard run from the city of Memphis, and Hoover beat it out. But it is constantly going to be that case, and you're going to constantly be needing to reinvest in this city and in this facility. So that has occurred through time. That has occurred when we built batting cages for the SEC, when we built an additional field for the SEC as part of the Finley expansion, the Finley project. So those things are constantly going to be needed, and it's a great tourist draw for us, for the city, and this funding is needed to continue that. And then lastly, quickly on the interchange, this is long overdue. As a resident who lived out west side of Hoover off South Shadescrest Road for about 15 years. This was needed 25 years ago, and it's still needed. So I was gladly support the city and its endeavor.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford. I would ask if you're here to speak like Mr. Sanford has or Mr. Dangle about all 3, you're most welcome to. If there's one of these 3 that you're particularly interested in, I would ask you just hold off until we get to that item. But if you'd like to address the whole capital plan, we'd love to hear from you now before we vote on that item. But if it's just about the Fine Arts Center or the interstate, or the Met in particular, we can hold off on that. Would you like to speak now? Yes. Come on. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Larry Wojciechowski. I live at 2112 Swan Lake Cove, which is in South Lake Estates. I'm on the board of South Lake Residents Association and the chairman of its Architectural Review Committee. I'm here to ask the City of Hoover to include in its plan. We are supportive of everything that you're doing in the three components of the resolution, but we'd like to ask you also to take a hard look at the stormwater management program, which specifically in our area is drastically needed to be improved. We are suffering. There are people who are experiencing thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of damage every time we have a couple of inches of rain. And it's not helping us move forward. So I would ask you again to take a look at that. We have met with a number of people in the room regarding the issues, and we still are waiting for a response. Thank you.
Thomas Van Ness, 3117 Paradise Acres, 35244. I've spoken on this a little bit before. The purpose of government is to serve and protect. I spoke on police and how good a job they did here and how good a job they have been doing for years, as it's had in the Hoover Sun. We have to grow. We have to have things like intersections on the interstate. We've got to, because we have so many things going on. We need to keep things going at the Hoover Met because a lot of our financial stuff is based on that. But we have to grow it so that whenever things are going wrong, in whatever there is an issue, we get that taken care of as well. As my predecessor up here at the microphone just said, the stormwater situation has been going on for years. The lakes are starting to fill up at Indian Springs, River Chase, and Paradise Lake. And it's going to cause a problem down the road, whether it's from ADEM, who comes in and takes a look, whether it's from the Cahaba River keepers, who go out and look and see, oh my goodness, Vestavia Hills and Hoover are pouring mud into the Cahaba River. These lakes have limits. And as the more and more mud and trash and trees and wood come down from the mountains into the Cahaba River, we have a problem. It has to be a balance. It really looks good when we can say we've done these things to keep our economy going, to build it up, to make it better, to make Hoover a great place. But that's not all it takes. It takes making a place where people can live and people can feel like they're living safely and their property will not be destroyed. I had to have a new driveway put in after the October 6th last year. $32,000. These are issues that we have to deal with. And I thank you for your time.
Anyone else like to speak on item 12? Yes, sir.
My name's William Carey. I live at 2117 South Wind Circle in South Lake Estates, and I've owned that piece of property where we built our home since 1992. And we moved in to our home in 95, and then we bought an adjacent piece of property roughly 97. But At the time we bought it, the adjacent piece of property had lake access. All that's been eradicated because there's so much sediment that has filled that slough. So I can't build a home and sell it on lot 76 because it's been damaged by sediment. One of the things that if you're in the audience or a council member and haven't read the piece that the vision statement that Mayor Brocato, I think that was adopted by the zoning commission in July of 2020. It's a beautiful vision plan. And if the people in the audience aren't familiar with it, or the council hasn't read that lately, there's a lot of great information in there. But the key thing to the people of these lakes that are getting damaged, the mayor addressed that as part of his agenda for future Hoover. And it relates to taking care of the Cahaba River. It relates to dealing with the lakes as catch basins to protect the Cahaba River. But some of these lakes as catch basins, as they've stated, have filled up with sediment. But where I'm being damaged, I've got a river. When it rains, it doesn't have to be a big rain, but I've got a river that will go across lot 76. I can't sell it. I can't build a home on it and sell it. But it's no longer lake access because I've been damaged by a gully of a lot of land that has filled up the catch basin that I had constructed. That is and underground piping. I've had to clean that out. But I would just ask, as some of the other speakers have asked, that we consider taking care of these lakes and the damage that's going on to not just Indian Valley Lake, but the other lakes as well. I don't think we can keep ignoring that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak on item number 12? We have a motion and second for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We'll now take up item number 13, Resolution 6899-23. Mr. Corley.
This resolution approves improvements related to the interchange over Interstate 459 in the city of Hoover and authorizes and directs the mayor, city administrator, chief financial officer, city clerk, and all other appropriate officers of the city to proceed with the interchange improvements. The cost of said improvements shall be approximately $61 million and be paid out of proceeds from the issuance by the city of general or limited obligation warrants out of legally available revenues of the city or out of a combination thereof.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution number 6899-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any questions or comments from the body tonight?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rice, could you speak on any kind of timeline that the public might be able to witness? I know it would be estimated.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Middlebrooks. And I got to spot Chris and Blake so they can shake their head yes or no if I say something correct or incorrect. So we're in some right-of-way conversations right now for some remaining pieces of property that are needed, so that work is ongoing. That can be a few months of getting to resolution depending on how amicable the property owner is to that process. And then we'll move into a phase of utility relocation, and I don't know that we know specifically for this project, but that is several months. Do we know an established time frame for that yet, or has that been determined? Not determined yet, okay. A lot of that hinges on final design, and so that design work has been going on for many months, and we think that it'll probably culminate within this fiscal year, but we do have, the possibility that it'll wrap into next fiscal year. So once we have final design, a lot of those questions can be answered with specificity. Right now, that's the phase we're in, the phase we're headed into. In the background, design work is ongoing, but we think that this is probably a 5 to 7 year process from this point before anybody will drive over the to-be-constructed exit. I wish we could be more specific. We'll certainly get a better timeline, and we'll apprise the council of that as we go forward.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments or questions from the members? Councilor Murphy? You're good. Okay. Any other member? We'll now entertain comments from members of the public. Mr. Goff?
Good afternoon. Council, I know you haven't yet met me. I'm Josh Goff. I live at 1026 Old Section Road and also on I live at 1020 Old Section Road and I own a piece of property which is 1026 Old Section Road. So I feel like me and my wife purchased this home July of last year coming in. It's an amazing neighborhood. Old Section Road is truly unique to Hoover. We have awesome amenities in Hoover. Me and my wife came from West Homewood and we've loved Hoover from afar for a long time. And we didn't move to Hoover because we wanted a big house with a little land. My wife had a dream as a little girl to own horses. And so I feel like God charged me with three things, and that's to love him above all else, be the spiritual leader of my household, and the third is help make my wife's dreams come true, which is Old Section Road. So we're honored to be able to steward that land for a period of time. God has that on loan to us. And as we drove down this road for the first time, I was blown away. I was like, literally, this is awesome. You don't see this in any other cities across America, especially not a city as great as Hoover. So learned about the possibility of Interchange being built behind that neighborhood, which is extremely concerning. There's only one other place that I know of in Hoover, and kind of around the Walmart area back behind that, where you can have land to have equines, so horses. And we have greater, in our period in which we've lived there, we've met a whole lot of residents that started out, just trying to get out and be a part of the community and learn, who our neighbors are. Me and my wife serve in a community which is Woodlawn, pretty impoverished area of Birmingham, and we went around the first few weeks and we're asking police officers, hey, we feel like we need to get plugged in and give back. We do that in Woodlawn. We want to do that in the community in which we're in. We kind of did that a little in West Homewood. So back to the conversation of the interchange. I would strongly urge y'all to consider, there was a proposal in 19 to have that interchange be based off South Shades Crest Road, which would not affect any neighborhoods. I understand there's hurdles with elevation there as high as that bridge, but that no neighborhoods would be affected there. I want y'all to strongly consider the fact that we have tenure in our neighborhood. Mr. James Robertson right here, the gentleman with the Hoover Bucks hat on, he's been around longer than Hoover's been here. He's been around longer than 459's been here. Many of our neighbors have been around for, 30, 40 plus years. This is their home. There's been encroachments on that, i.e. from the fire station being built there. No one's against the fire station. We want that. Our house, something happens to our house, they're right there. So we're not opposed to alleviating traffic. No one in our neighborhood has expressed that to us. I think it's great. We need to do that. You're helping to put in a community which is Everly, and we're gonna need to have that discussion. But destroying a neighborhood as unique as ours is, I would love to have y'all out. I asked Mr. Lyda to come out, and he had concern from a safety standpoint, and understand that of it being a mob type atmosphere.
Mr. Goff, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Gammon.
I'm Danny Gammon. I live at 1015 Old Section Road. And James has been there longer than me, but not by much. Sort of dovetailing off of what Josh was talking about, our neighborhood is a neighborhood that is made up of Hoover citizens. And one of the things that has been evident over the years is this neighborhood has had to work with Hoover in a lot of different situations, and we've always done that. And the emphasis has always been what is best for the citizens of Hoover, as opposed to what's best for a developer or any type of outside development type work around Hoover. It's always focused on what's the benefit to Hoover. There's no question about the need for relief. I'm pretty sure in the master plan for that whole area, long before Ross Bridge Parkway was there was a need for that traffic to go somewhere besides Highway 150. The one thing that I guess my biggest concern is that Hoover does not look at this little subdivision as important enough to protect. Like Josh said, we're not above or opposed to the traffic, but we want to protect the residents who live in this neighborhood. I know, for instance, sound abatement, that kind of stuff. If the road that was going behind our neighborhood, not necessarily the interchange, but just the road connecting 150 to the interchange, was the same as Ross Bridge Parkway, Deer Valley Parkway, whichever name you're familiar with, we would not have the type of traffic behind our neighborhood that Deer Valley neighborhood is protected from. And so I just want to encourage the council to work with the state of Alabama, the Department of Transportation, to provide some things that maybe they don't normally provide: noise abatement, privacy, those types of things that are important to neighborhoods, to protect it from being squeezed out, if you will, to where it doesn't exist anymore. And I think, like I said, our neighborhood is unique. If you don't believe it, got to come see it. Mr. Lyda knows a lot of the history that we've had out there. And we've always been proponents of being good citizens with Hoover. And we just ask that you will look hard at providing some protections that maybe are not normal, but I think they're important enough to protect this group of Hoover citizens.
Very good.
Thank
you, Mr. Gammon. Yes, sir.
Sir, my name is Stephen Blomstead. I live at 316 Old Mill Circle. Everybody in here talks about how they've been from Alabama and Hoover. I actually moved from across the country, and I landed here in Hoover, and I've only been in that neighborhood for about 30 days. So I kind of inherited Interchange is going to be about 60 feet from my property line, so it's about probably 90 feet from my bedroom window. My concerns are, like the gentleman who just spoke, the noise. There's animals that live back there. You guys are going to kind of eradicate the deer and all the other wildlife that are there, so it's an environmental concern. Worry about my children that play in the backyard. Everybody talks about baseball and all this other stuff and spend millions of dollars on that. I don't really care about that. I just care about the safety of my children, my family, and the people that are in the neighborhood. I know that talking to you guys on Thursday, not all of you, but some of you, but I mean, from California, they put sound barrier walls when they build roads that are this close to a neighborhood. I'm literally going to be able to like sell lemonade in my backyard to people that are passing by. It's so close. It's kind of crazy when you guys have such a huge lot, 22 acres, that you guys can push the road a little bit further back. If you guys are going to do it, I feel like you guys are going to do it anyways, no matter what we all say. But I mean, somebody here said that he spoke for everybody in the room, but he doesn't speak for me. I don't want that roadway in my backyard. It's going to cause all kinds of issues. Like if you live next to a freeway, it's just the noise pollution. You have all the chemicals and stuff coming off the freeway. You have all the pollution that now I'm going to have to deal with. If it was in your guys' backyard, I don't think you guys would vote yes for it. It's $61 million to alleviate, a few minutes of traffic. And I know that some people are here are concerned about Shades Crest and all this stuff, but you can go down to Bessemer and get off, or get on the freeway or get off the freeway from heading down the other direction. It's going to be, to me, kind of comical when you guys spend $120-something million to save a few minutes when you guys can improve 150. For whatever reason, the state of Alabama or the city of Hoover doesn't paint the roadways with reflective markers. They don't have adequate street lights in the area on 150 to where it's pitch black. And somebody that I spoke to not that long ago said safety was the biggest concern. Let's spend money on the roadways that are already existing and make those safe first. That's how I feel. To me, I don't know if it's a waste of money. I mean, I'm a short-term Hoover resident. I've been here for, I don't know, I closed on that house on December 16th. I've been here for about 30 days actually living there. It's a nice area, like Josh was saying. The only people here that want that roadway are people that don't live in that neighborhood, just for ease of access, but they're not really considering the ramifications it has on the people that live there. And there's environmental concerns or safety concerns and stuff that we all care about, because that's a home for me, and I got 12 seconds left, but if my property devalues, like right now the interest rates are crazy. I bought that because I had to be closer to work down here from Coleman, and it's just, what am I gonna do, get stuck in a neighborhood that I can't sell a house, so I need to move on.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you.
If I could offer just one point of clarity, and we'll welcome to hear from you in just a second. The item before the council is not whether to build a road or where to build a road. I want to be very clear about that. The item as the city attorney read, that is under for consideration from the council is whether or not to authorize the issue of bonds to pay for the project. Design of that road will come, as Mr. Rice confirmed, later in the summer. There will be public meetings as associated with that. You will have an opportunity, once again, to be heard by ALDOT and representatives that will make decisions that will impact you. Tonight is solely about whether or not to enter into an agreement with the state of Alabama, which we've already done, to borrow these funds. So
Well, don't approve the funds then.
you've got the microphone. You've got the microphone. Name and address, please.
Jennifer Goff, I live at 1020 Old Section Road. Don't approve the bond. You have people living in that community that are gonna lose their homes, and you don't seem to care about those people at all. Yes, I have horses, and yes, it's gonna be right next to my horses that I worry about, but also somebody lives in their home that their grandfather built in 1905 is ridiculous, and those people have nowhere to go. They can't afford to go anywhere else. And I just ask that you consider those people. No, we're not Trace Crossings. No, we're not Ross Bridge, but we are a community, and those people are important. So just consider that, please.
Thank you, Ms. Goff. Anyone else like to speak tonight? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Stuart Hicks. I live at 300 Old Mill Lane in the old section area. I moved here in 1985, and during that time, the Galleria was just being built. You could get to that intersection from our neighborhood in 3 minutes. There were no traffic lights. There was no intersections. The trees were canopied over 150. It was a country road. Now, we've gone from that point to this point to where you can't get to 459 from our neighborhood in that same period of time. It's usually double that period of time. Now, I understand this road is supposed to solve a problem, but it's a problem that was caused in part by you guys. This road's gonna cause another problem. It's gonna be a solution to a problem, which is gonna cause a problem, and you're gonna need another solution to a problem. You're gonna have that 4-lane road going all the way to Brox Gap Parkway, and you're gonna be hearing more and more things being put along that road. You're gonna cause another problem. At some point in time, you have to say enough. Okay, you gotta stop it. At some point in time, we've got to stop it. We gotta stop electing people that are gonna do this to us. Now, when I moved into this neighborhood, I could go to the Food World, which at that time was located at the corner of 31, 150. I knew the grocer knew me. I stopped, talked to people there, they all knew me. I go to Big B Drugs. There's probably a lot of people here who don't remember that. Big B Drugs to get my prescriptions. The pharmacist knew me, saw me coming, had my prescriptions ready. I could drive to like I said, my neighborhood in 3 minutes. It was a town where people knew people. Next time you're driving and you're trying to get on 459 or wherever you're going in Hoover, and it takes you 7 minutes to go 2 miles, and you're frustrated, I want you to turn that mirror and look at yourself in the eye, because you caused it. You helped cause it. When you're checking out of the grocery store and the person checking you out doesn't even look you in the eye, you caused it, okay? What we've lost in this town is cannot be found again. We have to move. I understand that. And my cynicism keeps me from thinking that you guys are gonna do anything about this. But in the future, people like us that live in towns like this have to be respected. And I'll tell you what, people that live in these big neighborhoods you're building, these gated communities, they're gonna get tired of driving in this traffic. They're gonna get tired of all that, and they're gonna move out.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Come on down.
My name is Ruth Stobbits, and I live at 105 Cobblestone Lane. I live on the first street coming into off of Old Section Road. And The thing that makes me the angriest is you guys bring God into this room, and God is watching you every day in how you handle yourself in your business and in these positions in how you handle yourself for our community. And it's been very poorly done. We've had the mayor and the engineer come out because of water issues we've had, and all we get is snarky little smiles. We want them to come look and see at the damage, and they won't even do that. This road was supposed to be on the other side of the fire station, and now all of a sudden it's coming through our neighborhood. And it's been very sneakily done, because they have purposefully not told us what's going on until we have to dig and listen and hear certain things, and then we find out that now it's coming through our neighborhood. And 8 or 9 people are losing their home. And it's gonna create a horrendous situation for the rest of us in living there. And we've been living there a long, long time. So instead of taking care of your citizens, you're worried about putting in these gated communities, and it doesn't even have the roadway to deal with all these people. You've got another set of homes that are going in down 150 that are going to bring about 8,000 to 10,000 more people into Hoover. You don't even have the road system. I'm just so angry at all of you. And I'm going to see about not getting any of you elected again.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else like to speak? Mr. Robertson. Come on up, sir. Good to see you.
James Robertson, 1116 Old Section Road, Hoover, Alabama, 35244. And I live below the subdivision. I was there before the subdivision. I was in Jefferson County with Tom Glover and all of them in meetings about putting a subdivision in. Well, we got the subdivision, I don't have a problem, and there's a lot of good neighbors there. And I was really proud of Hoover all through the years, and I built houses all over Hoover and everywhere else. Do you know that my garage has been flooded probably 30 times? I've had all of them out to check it out, called the mayor's office, no response yet. The Public Works can only do so much. They can only clean the trash out of a culvert that's undersized. But all these times I've called them out there, and they've done nothing. They did all this. I said, what do you do in a stormwater survey on this land? I've never been flooded. I've been water dumped on me. The water comes from above me, not rising water. Now, so Hoover is getting a little bit lax. It's just like a few years back when Frank Skinner came out and told us we're going to get this substation from Alabama Power put in our subdivision, and we need to be nice and work with them, and they'd put nice walls around it. And I said, we don't want that stuff. We don't want it. And then the power companies are trying to make their presentation. And I said, how can you, when we less than 1/2% of the customer base for this new substation, why not put it in Trace Crossings? Where is it? It's in Trace Crossings. They didn't put it in. Of course, Frank said at the end, said, man, we beat them, didn't we? I said, what did you do? But back to this, I wondered about this road, and I would like to meet the man who first designed this thing. I've done all kinds of work like this, development, you name it, Lake Cyrus, whatever. But who even thought up this plan? It seemed like such a waste of money. I could draw you up a nice one. I made a little version. I would have taken Parkwood Road and turned it into 4-lane. The access to I-459 is much less steeper terrain as here on Shades Crest. It would help Bessemer. Why don't these people work together?
Mr. Robertson,
Yeah.
I'd love to continue the dialogue with you. Your time's up. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
3
but I'm
minutes goes
2
quick.
people, so I get another 3 minutes. But one other
understand.
question
Yes,
now.
Thank you, sir.
About the bond.
Yes, sir.
If they put that road in there, we need to be exempted from having to pay our share of that bond.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Any other comments tonight? Very good. We have a motion and a second for resolution number 6899-23. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We'll now move to item number 14, resolution number 6900-23. Mr. Corley.
This resolution approves improvements related to public parks and a performing arts center in the city of Hoover, and authorizes and directs the mayor, city administrator, chief financial officer, city clerk, and all other appropriate officers of the city to proceed with the park improvements. The cost of such improvements shall be approximately $17 million and shall be paid out of the proceeds from the issuance by the city of general or limited obligation warrants, out of legally available revenues of the city, or out of a combination thereof.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution number 6900-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from members of the body tonight?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Councilor Middlebrooks.
I'll let Mr. Posey speak first, sorry.
Thank you. Just want to thank all of you for, especially those of you who were here last term. I know we've talked about this a long time. I know we put a lot of money toward getting every number we could get, whether it's, how much it costs to run it, every number we could get on this facility to make the best decision we could. And that it is a portion of a much larger redevelopment project, probably one of the largest that's ever happened in this city. There's a lot of people here come here to talk about this tonight. The entire Arts Council is here. If y'all will hold up your hand, you'll be recognized. People from the Bluff Park Art Association are back in the back. They came. And even our newly formed Hoover Arts Foundation, who is going to be tasked with helping us raise money through a 501c3 for this building. So this has been a long time coming, and I just want to thank all y'all for supporting this vision, and to the mayor for working on it and getting us this far. And hopefully this will be step one in some pretty significant steps in getting this done. And I think we've done our due diligence on it. Now it's time to take this vote and move forward.
Yes, sir. I think we first met with the developer on this project about 1.5 years ago. And if I recall, that developer was gung-ho, ready to break ground within 6 months, I'd say. No offense to legal counsel over here, but then the lawyers got involved. And it's been about 1.5 years later. We still have no terms with this developer signed. Mr. Rice, has any progress since Thursday night been made on terms of an agreement?
Yes. We had a long conference call today. I think I mentioned on Thursday night that we had a draft lease that we received from this developer, and it had a number of points that we wanted to see addressed to make sure it reflected properly protecting our assets. One of the reasons that it's taken so long is the original proposal from the developer, we eventually determined not to be a feasible use of taxpayer dollars. So we had to kind of push that back across the table and say, we can't do that, and continue conversations. And now we've arrived at a construction that we think is wise and fiscally prudent. At the conclusion, we have a response to their initial lease draft. At the conclusion of the meeting, we asked our project attorneys and city attorney to reach out, convey that response to the owner's attorneys, and to begin a process of whittling through those items that we talked about. We know what we need to see in the document to make it worthwhile for the city. I do want to stipulate, though, that this project does not necessarily rise and fall on that location. So Mr. Posey's comments are correct. I do think it'd be the largest redevelopment that we've ever seen in the city, to my knowledge. We've had big developments. This would probably be the biggest redevelopment. But the desire and the momentum is there. And if this body concurs with that, then we'll move forward with funds and we'll create a performing arts center. We'll create a center for the arts. And we'll do it somewhere in the city of Hoover to best advantage. We believe that this is the optimal plan, and that's why we're diligently working with this particular group to make it happen. But that's not the only place it can go. So, if we can't ever get there, which I think it would be a very remote possibility that we couldn't get there. But if we can't ever get there on that side, I think we have a couple of good ideas about where we would look next. And this would not be time wasted. The feasibility study, the preliminary design work, the things that Mr. Posey referenced will work at other locations. They're not site-specific necessarily. And that money and time would still be well spent creating this amenity for the community.
Thank you, but as of today, we haven't signed off on any terms with the developer.
No, sir, we don't have any money to give them right now. So we won't sign off any terms until we have funding, until we bring a final document to this body for your approval. But we have made progress every week. And we've made progress between 2:30 and 3:30 today.
So what you're saying is terms can't be agreed upon without taking out a $20 million bond, $17 million bond.
Our negotiating position is weakened if we don't have funds to execute any terms that we might agree upon.
Mr. President, I have no doubt. I'm a big believer in this, and it has been long overdue, and I commend your work on what you've done for this and the mayor's office and Mr. Rice, the foundation, the Arts Council, Bluff Park Art Association, everyone involved. I commend you all. I know this is going to spur economic development. I'm just wrestling with the fact that we may borrow $17 million and we never come to terms on this, and then we have that money. It's just a fiscal policy I'm having a problem with. So I'm going to sit back and listen to all these fine people that are coming to speak in support of it and see if they can change my mind within the next 5 or however long that this process takes. But it's not because I don't support the Center for the Arts. I do. If we had terms signed, I would yay all the way. And if I do happen to vote no on it, it passes and we come to terms on it, I'm going to be the first to congratulate the city and everyone. So.
Very good. Councilor Driver.
Mr. Rice, do you mind coming back up? Just a point of clarity, as with the last item, does what we're voting on today obligate us to build the Center for the Arts, or is it merely an expression of our intent and our desire to issue the bonds to support that intent?
I believe it's the latter. And so we've had a lot of conversation as recently as today with the bond team, and they've communicated with bond counsel. And the wording of this resolution was specifically crafted around flexibility for this body. So I think it's right to characterize as this expresses the intent to create that facility in our city, but it's not a contract. It's not specific to any location or any builder. This is the thing that we'd like to bring into existence in Hoover, and this is the funding that we would use to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, I also have a question for Ms. Bolt. I couldn't see you back there.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe for those of us who are not accountants in the room, what will happen with the funds while they are parked and waiting to be deployed for this project and the next one that we're going to talk about?
Yes, as soon as we go to market for this, we're going to have an investment committee meeting to let our investment advisors to look at some of our options to invest those funds. Again, we've talked before about arbitrage and what that happens. We cannot earn more money in interest than what the interest of the loan is, but we have some options that we want to do to invest that money while it sits there in an escrow account and earn some money off that, and we'll be looking at the arbitrage repercussions of that as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from members of the body? All right, we'll take comments from the public. Ma'am?
Hi, Pam Sale, 3670 Guyton Road, 35244. I am obviously a Hoover resident, and I am a member of the Hoover Arts Council. I also own the Alabama Dance Academy located right down the road. And several of these students are here as well. Alabama Dance Academy was born in Hoover in 1995, almost 30 years ago, with no place to perform. I have watched, as a resident, watch the city pour money into sporting events and buildings and fields, and I don't think any one of you would look at your student who was a football player and tell them to go to Thompson High School because they have a field. I think this is unacceptable for the city, for the size that we are. I want you to look at those students who plan or who can benefit the most. Look at the future of what we have and give these students what every other student in this community has. Every athlete has a place to play, but dancer athletes do not. They don't. These children go to school here, they worship here, they can't dance here. And I have watched other communities build schools with state-of-the-art theaters, and that's where we have to go to perform. We go to Birmingham, we go to Thompson High School, we go to Oak Mountain High School, because all of those places have better theaters. There is not one theater in the school system in Hoover, there is not one building in this whole city that will support us to be able to do what we do. I implore you to look at those dancers and do right by them tonight. Please, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? All right, we have a motion and second for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We'll now move to item number 15, resolution number 6901-23. Mr. Corley.
This resolution approves improvements to the Hoover Met Complex in the city of Hoover and authorizes and directs the mayor, city administrator, chief financial officer, city clerk, and other appropriate officers of the city to proceed with the Hoover Met improvements. The cost of said improvements shall be approximately $15 million and paid out of proceeds from the issuance by the city of general or limited obligation warrants, out of legally available revenues of the city, or out of a combination thereof.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 6901-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the body tonight?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I want to be clear, I do not enjoy being the lone no vote.
Vote aye.
Maybe I'm channeling some former colleague, but I'll go back to fiscal policy. When we negotiate with the SEC, I feel like we have a great relationship between the SEC and the city. And, you know, I spoke in length with Mr. Pate last night about the time he negotiated with them and his time here. You know, they have it's different times, I guess. A lot of times he had verbal handshake agreements with them. I know that's hard to come by these days. But I feel like we should have a list, at least a firm list of improvements needed to gain that long-term contract that we're seeking. I have an issue with just a pool of money being approved and possibly not using all of this bond money for that. That is a fiscal policy that I can't accept. But once again, if we had terms again, a list of projects, even if it met this amount, I would support knowing that we had that. But just the uncertainty is something that I have concern about. So just thank you.
Any other comments from members of the body tonight? Any comments from members of the public tonight on this item? We have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We'll now move to item number 16, ordinance number 23-2595. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance authorizes the annexation of certain property located at 402 Cambo Lane as requested by the owners William and Rachel Schultz.
Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance number 232595.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We will now have a public hearing for ordinance number 23-2595, and I would open the public hearing by asking members of the body if they have any comments or questions about the proposed annexation. Seeing none, any member of the public here that would like to speak for or against the annexation during the public hearing? We will close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Swiney?
Aye.
Ms. Driver?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. McClinton?
Aye.
Mr. Lyda?
Aye. A vote of 7 ayes, 0 nays. The motion carries as an ordinance is adopted. I had trouble finding it. Dr. Middlebrooks, I do want to go back to a statement you made, just to clarify. Based on your recommendation, we did include on each of these 3 resolutions, and I'd like to read it. If the funding allocated is in excess of the actual amount, the overage will be brought before the council for appropriation approval. So just clarify, because you said that it may not cost that. So you will have an opportunity, as will I and each of our colleagues, to vote on that should it come in. I just want to make sure you knew that was in there based on your ask.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you. We'll now have a first reading, beginning with ordinance number 23-2581. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance authorizes the annexation of certain property located at 5332 Old Highway 280 as requested by the owner, South Central Bell Telephone, AT&T, through James Wood, the owner's representative. A public hearing will be held on March 20th, 2023.
We'll now move to item number 18 for a first reading, ordinance number 23-2596. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance amends short-term rental regulations in the city as follows. References in Chapter 6 of the Municipal Code of the City of Hoover to Department of Planning and Community Development are hereby deleted and replaced with Planning and Zoning Department, and short-term rental unit is added as a permitted use in PR2, PO, and PC zones, and as a conditional use in the PI zone. Public hearing will be held on March 20th, 2023.
As Mr. Corley just read, these 2 items will be brought back up at our March 20 meeting for final consideration and potential vote. That brings